Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Mitch. Good Thursday evening to you all. Hope you guys are doing awesome out there tonight and had yourselves a fantastic day. And I certainly hope everyone has been having a great week out there so far. Here to break down the latest on what's going on out there in the tropics, way out in the Atlantic. We do have a tropical wave that we definitely need to pay attention to. It has a pretty good shot to develop into our next named storm, which will be the B name, which will be Beryl. But it could develop into a tropical depression as early as sometime tonight, maybe into tomorrow morning. So we're going to give you all the latest info on this, talk about the latest from the National Hurricane Center. We'll talk about what's going on with this system right now. We'll kind of dive deep into it and why it's so healthy and why it could continue to be healthy over the next day or so. And we'll speak on the latest model guidance that we have. We'll compare the GFS with the European model, talk about its ensemble guidance. And then we'll get to the part of the video where we'll really nerd out on you folks a little bit. And I'm going to try to explain all this in a way where you guys as the audience can understand. But we'll speak on why this has such a good shot to develop over the next several days and eventually has a shot to become our first hurricane of the 2024 hurricane season. So this does have a shot to do that. I really do think it does. And it would be pretty wild this early on in the season, especially in this area of the Atlantic. So we're going to break down all that info because there's a lot of people that think that, there's a lot of Saharan dust out here in the Atlantic, and there's a lot of dry air on top of the system, but a lot of people are wondering why this even has a shot to develop with all the dry air you're hearing about coming off the Africa and the Saharan dust entering the Atlantic. So we will give you all the information. We'll discuss on why we think it's going to do so well as it continues to chug east to west across the Atlantic. So if you guys have not subscribed, certainly consider doing that. Like the video if you like it. And of course, if anybody has anything that I can pray about or pray over, as always, please put those in the comments below so I can do it and so others can do so too. So this is the latest information we have from the National Hurricane Center. As of right now, just know that the National Hurricane Center is about to drop another update here in about probably 20, 30, 40 minutes. But this is the information I have right now. I do think that this could change. But in that red X, that is where our tropical wave is right at this moment. Okay, this has an 80% chance to develop in this red area out ahead of this red X into a tropical depression or a tropical storm within the next 7 days. Okay, and I'm going to try to catch an update here. Let's see if we can do it. Nope, we are not. I'll try to go back to this graphic to see if we can catch the latest information. What I think could potentially change is they bump up this 80 to a 90% chance. I don't think we're going to get a bump up to a tropical depression or anything, but they could bump it up another 10%. Now, within the next 48 hours, as you can tell in the orange, this has a 60% chance to develop into a depression or, a tropical storm within the next 48 hours. Okay? And like I said, this is dubbed 95L, Invest 95L, which is what the National Hurricane Center dubs a stronger wave that has potential out ahead of it to develop. So this is Invest 95L right now. They might end up upgrading it to PTC2 or something, which stands for like potential tropical cyclone. Just weird terminology that they use. It basically means that it has a pretty good shot to go to a named storm or a depression. So right now, none of that, just an invest that has a pretty good shot to develop. And I could see this getting bumped up to a 60 to a 70% chance to develop, which would show up from an orange to a red in the next update. But as of right now, making this video around 7 p.m. Eastern Time, 60% chance to develop. It's not going to change a whole lot. We know that this has a pretty good shot to develop here. So let's take a look at what's going on right now in the entire Atlantic Basin. I do want to mention what's going on in the Caribbean. Not going to speak much on this besides what I talk about right now over the next minute or so. But we do have a lot of shower and storm development ongoing, persistent convection in the Caribbean in this circled area right here. You see, the greens, the yellows, the oranges, the reds right in here. This is where we have a lot of tropical moisture. And this is a tropical wave right here. But it's running out of ocean to kind of go over. Eventually, this is going to head off into Central America, the Yucatan Peninsula. Some of its energy might sneak into the southwest Gulf of Mexico, the Bay of Campeche. But in general, very low chance to develop into a depression or a named storm over the next few days. We don't think this is going to last. Just a lot of unsettled weather right now that you're dealing with in areas of Cuba and then as far south as Central America. But we'll certainly watch to see if this pulls or has a trick up its sleeve or anything like that. Our main area to watch is this area right in here. This is our main tropical wave. Already has a nice cyclonic flow to it. It's kind of turning out there very well, very healthy tropical wave. And we're going to watch this as this continues to move east to west across the Atlantic and then eventually affect the Lesser Antilles. The Windward Islands, the Leeward Islands, who is it going to hit the hardest? We don't know. And I've had a couple people in the comments chiming in from this area. First off, that's awesome. I got people from this area of the world tuning in. Welcome, and thank you for trusting me and watching my content. And second, we're just not quite sure who is going to impact the highest, but we're pretty confident. I think that this is going to bring at least impacts to you guys. Is it going to be a tropical wave? Is it going to be a depression? Is it going to be a tropical storm, a hurricane? I think it has a potential to be a hurricane. We just got to watch. We're going to talk about all that here in a second. But I do want to watch the energy behind this too, because model guidance likes the idea of maybe some energy back here behind our main area of concern, behind it, kind of trailing behind. This tropical wave right behind Invest 95L, I think has a chance too to develop. I just think it's really close. So I'm not completely trusting some of the model guidance I'm seeing of this developing. But we'll talk about that also. Main area though is this. Let's zoom in a little bit closer to this. This is water vapor loop. So this is going to indicate where dry air is in place and moist air is in place in different levels of the atmosphere. So, I mean, obviously your eyes go right to the middle of the screen. And we're going to jump to pink right here, see if this works. And it does. We're good. And one thing you'll note right off the dot, and if you can't note, I'll try to circle and draw some lines on here. This has a pretty good little cyclonic flow to it. Okay, it looks almost like a shrimp out here. This is a sign of a pretty healthy tropical wave. It's not being bothered by much at all. In fact, let me get this off your screen. Right here in this area, see this explosion of kind of white on your screen? That's a lot of shower and storm development. And this is most likely forming kind of right over whatever low-level circulation there is here. And I think there is. I think it's elongated, kind of strung out. But I definitely think there's a low-level swirl under all this mid-level convection over this. And when you get like an explosion of convection like this over the heart of the system, it really protects it, shrouds it with moisture, doesn't allow for any dry air to get involved. One thing I'll mention is this huge entire monsoonal trough right into here. A lot of moisture, right? Kind of way out here in the tropical Atlantic. So, there's a good bit of moist air out ahead of this too. This kind of shade of blue right in here, this is moist air and different levels of the atmosphere. But one thing you'll note is up here where it's like black, that is dry air in all levels of the atmosphere. So there's dry air nearby this system, guys, but it's not really able to get in. Now, I do think there's always going to be a little bit of dry air that's going to try to get in, but I think for the most part, this system is really shrouding itself well with deep moisture. Now, if you notice, you see this what look like clouds. I mean, it is clouds, but you see how it's kind of fanning out this way? This is kind of fanning out that way. This is somewhat fanning out that way. Not much going on right here. It's more so going like this. This is what we call an anticyclonic flow. So this system is positioned on the southern end of an upper ridge. And you really have a good outflow in the upper levels of the atmosphere. A very favorable upper wind pattern, really pushing air away from this system and allowing for more air to rise. And of course, persistent rising of air allows for more shower and development. So this is basically helping the system maintain, a very nice moist bubble of atmospheric air, if you will. Okay, winds in the upper levels of the atmosphere are going the opposite direction as winds in the mid to lower levels of the atmosphere. You would think, hey, that would mess up the circulation. Well, no, it pushes air away from the system, allowing for more air to rise. It quite literally is like a ventilation system for this tropical system out here. So it's doing well. Okay, it's a very healthy tropical wave, and it looks even healthier as the sun is set on it. So let's go on and break down some of the latest model guidance. What we'll do first is we'll discuss, and let me make sure we got it right. This is the latest GFS. It just ran an hour or so ago. So we'll start off tomorrow morning. It's initializing as 1,009 millibar low. We could wake up to a depression tomorrow. We could. Okay. I think over the next 48 hours, you're really going to start to see some upgrades of this system, whether it's a depression or a named storm. So we're going to kind of move it in 48 and like 24-hour increments here. So start off Friday morning. Let's go to Saturday morning. This starts to drop. The lower this number you see down here, the stronger the system goes. The lower the millibar number, which is that number right there, the stronger the system. So it's 1,004 millibar low at this point. Could be a tropical storm. Sometime Saturday night, I think this does have a decent chance to be Tropical Storm Beryl. And then we get into Sunday morning. GFS makes this a hurricane well east of the Lesser Antilles, guys. 988 millibar low, that is definitely a Category 1 hurricane. And we take it into Monday morning. This has a 973 millibar hurricane. I would say that's a high-end Category 1, Category 2 hurricane staring down the Lesser Antilles. But check out this wave right behind it, which I don't think is, in my opinion, I don't think that's this. I think it's what's coming behind it, but it could be, because this looks really close to this. We just got to watch. There's no point focusing too much on what's behind this. This needs to be the primary focus right here. So Monday morning, you got the GFS is saying an all-out hurricane staring down the Windward Islands. Okay. Now, a lot of people are wondering, what about my area here in the Lesser Antilles, Trinidad, all those things. We're not quite sure. So that's why I'm just kind of saying the Lesser Antilles as a whole. Windward, Leeward Islands. Yeah. So sometime Monday during the day, this makes landfall as a hurricane in the Lesser Antilles. Okay. And a pretty strong one too. Monday evening. And then this starts to get into the Eastern Caribbean, where it's a 977 millibar hurricane, Category 1, Category 2 hurricane. And then we go on and switch it to the Caribbean. This is for next Tuesday morning, July the 2nd. What is this going to do once it gets in the Caribbean? Of course, us in the U.S., Jamaica, the Dominican Republic, Haiti, which, by the way, has some very higher mountaintops, okay, higher elevations there. We call it the tropical system shredder. But one thing I will note here is the Eastern and Central Caribbean is not a kind place for tropical systems this time of the year especially. A lot of times you got a lot of shear. The trade winds are not favorable. Sometimes you got a tut in place that basically is coming down and whiplashing this system. What is going to be the atmospheric players out there on the table in the upper levels of the atmosphere? We're not quite sure. But the GFS is saying, hey, we're going to get this all the way into Wednesday morning. It's starting to bump this a little bit further north. Looks like it's heading right towards Jamaica. Still pretty far out. This is getting pretty far out. It's about 6 days out now, about 5.5, 6 days. 989 millibar, still probably Category 1 hurricane. And then, this starts to bring impacts to Jamaica, but it's weakening. It's now only a 994 millibar low, tropical storm. And then what happens once this gets deep into the Western Caribbean? We're not sure, but it does, make an additional landfall like after the 4th of July. This is all the way to July 5th, July 6th. Into the Yucatan Peninsula, and then it wants to sneak back in to the Gulf of Mexico. But that is getting over 10 days out, and there's no point really talking much on that. The European, what does it do? Same thing tomorrow morning, 1010 millibar low. We take it into Saturday morning, 1007 millibar low. We take it into Sunday morning, 1004 millibar low. At this point, I would say this is probably a tropical storm, but of course it's not getting as strong, as fast as the GFS. And then we go into Monday morning. Remember, the GFS has like a sub 980 millibar system, while the European doesn't even have a sub 1000 millibar system Monday morning. So you're obviously pulling for the weaker scenario if you're in the Lesser Antilles, but it does have a tropical storm making landfall kind of in the same area just about as the European, just much weaker sometime Monday. Okay, and then, of course, this will, I think, have a chance to maybe develop in the Eastern Caribbean, maybe not. But we'll kind of jump here. This is the Eastern Caribbean, a very compact 1001 millibar low pressure. It doesn't look that worrisome on the screen at all, but you continue to watch it. And basically for the life of this system, as it cruises literally east to west across the Caribbean, it kind of just maintains tropical storm status. This is Wednesday. This is getting to next Thursday. And then it makes landfall in Central America somewhere next, like, 4th of July evening. Okay, it's a 991 millibar tropical storm low-end hurricane. Okay, so that's the latest model guidance that we have. All right, if you look at the European ensemble, notice all the members clustered up. European ensemble makes up 51 members. Okay, and if one of those members develop it into a formable tropical system, then it's going to pop an L up on your screen. So of course they're all very clustered up. Okay, and we're actually going to move this right here. So this is kind of initializing for this Sunday morning. Okay, we'll keep this in motion. Look how they kind of remain clustered up. And you're going to see another cluster of L's right into here. All right, this is for the wave behind it. But let's focus in on this. So this is for like July 1st morning. Like, what is that? Next Monday morning. pretty solid signal that this is going to affect more so the Windward Islands over the Leeward Islands. Don't want to get them confused which one's further north and south. The Windward Islands, okay? But don't let your guard down if you're in the basically in the Leeward Islands, the northern section of the Lesser Antilles. Don't let your guard down also if you're in the Greater Antilles. Okay, but this continues. One thing you'll notice is this is still pretty clustered up together as we're getting into July 2nd. Okay, we're getting into July 3rd. Some of these members are scooting out a little bit further ahead. We got a solid signal right behind it. But for the most part, these aren't splitting up really bad. Like, there isn't a bunch of members going this way, a bunch of members going that way. For the most part, I mean, this is some solid agreement this far out. You got some sort of tropical system right here in the Central Caribbean, like next Wednesday morning. And then there is a little bit of splitting of these systems, but you know, it starts to widen out once it gets into the wide part of the Caribbean. Then you got to watch the other wave behind it. So we certainly need to watch this, guys. And the GFS ensemble kind of does the same thing, but it's not quite as aggressive with so many strong members. I mean, you got a couple members that are like sub 960 in here, which would make it close to a major hurricane category 3 or higher. And then we got some very weak members, like 1,007 millibar low. So a couple other things we'll look at is from Tropical Tidbits. You know, this is, you know, the model track guidance, and I'm just showing you this because look how tightly clustered these are. I mean, they really like the Windward Islands. But you want to watch all in the Lesser Antilles, okay? Because impacts will be brought all the way into the Leeward Islands too, okay? And then there's a little bit more of a wider gap once it gets into the Caribbean, but still not that wide, guys. It really isn't. And then you look at the intensity guidance map here, and listen, a lot of these, most of them bring it to at least Category 1 hurricane status. And, you know, I'm not going to show you the hurricane models yet because there's a lot of people that say it's not good to look at the hurricane models until this gets out of the invest stage and actually becomes a tropical storm. So we'll look at that more when this actually becomes a named storm. But, you know, some of those hurricane models are showing a worrisome scenario for sure. So one thing we'll mention, we'll try to explain this the best way where you guys as the audience can understand. Okay, remember at the beginning of the video when we were talking about what's going on with the system right now, we were talking about a favorable upper wind pattern. Okay, where you see these areas in blue, this is winds about 40,000 feet up in the air, way up in the air. So this is, you know, you can indicate where the upper ridge is and all that stuff. Okay, and let's just go on and bring it. Let's stop it right now. This is for this evening. This is what's going on right now. Okay, and let's draw on this. You see these arrows right here with the arrows on it, and they're kind of pointing away from the system right here. No, we definitely do not want yellow here. But you see these arrows, how they're kind of pointing away from the system right into here. This is kind of fanning out away from the L. This is kind of going towards it, but kind of like this, like that. So in general, there's a pretty good upper wind pattern well over this system. I mean, this tropical system, you know, we focus a lot on how that low to mid-level circulation is doing, but we look at the upper wind pattern as far as steering and just how well this system is doing regarding those, you know, upper atmospheric patterns and things like that. So I'm showing you this because you see all the arrows that are kind of going away from the system. Well, you have a nice outflow in the upper levels of the atmosphere, and this is because this is sitting basically at the base, the southern end of an upper ridge. You see the winds, kind of the arrows going like this, and then they're kind of like wrapping around like this, and they're kind of going like this. So this has a nice, in general, easternly flow upper outflow that's really helping this system to ventilate and breathe very well. What I'm trying to say is there's air being pushed out away from this system in the upper levels of the atmosphere, allowing for more air to rise, kind of like what I explained in the beginning of the video. So there's a nice upper wind pattern. I know I done said that about 112 times. So a lot of air being pushed away from the system in the upper levels of the atmosphere. And I know you're thinking like, well, the system in the low to mid levels, you know, rotates like this. So how does, you know, air going in the opposite direction not mess up the circulation of the system? Well, this is way above the system, right? The shower and storm and convection activity, that low level spin is in the lower levels of the atmosphere. This is in the upper levels, so air is trying to rise to the low to mid levels of the atmosphere, right? And then it hits those upper levels, and then it pushes the air away, okay? Whether it's getting pushed one way or the other, Is it directly under that, what we call anticyclonic flow? ULAC is weather terminology, or not? If air is being pushed away, it's allowing for more air to rise. So if more air is rising, it's allowing for more shower and storm activity to develop, which means that you got a lot more of a moist atmosphere that's maintaining itself. So this pattern basically continues all the way through this weekend. It's right beneath, an upper ridge, okay? And it doesn't have a lot of shear out ahead of it. Now, we do watch for dry air as we get, into the Caribbean. But for now, we're not going to focus too much on that. So, because of the favorable upper wind pattern, sure, and this is dry and moist air in the mid-levels of the atmosphere. Sure, you have a lot of dry air on top of this system, okay, from the Saharan dust and just dry air just in general, okay? And it is very close to the northern edge of this low pressure right here. But it's not really getting involved in the circulation of this system because of the favorable upper wind pattern, allowing for the continuation for shower and storm development, just basically aiding in a very moist atmosphere for this system. So it's being protected from dry air getting in the circulation because of that. And this continues, guys, especially as this continues to strengthen, it has a pretty nice moist environment that is maintained for the short-term life of this system. And as you can tell, none of this dry air right here is getting very involved in this system based off this run of the GFS. There is some, dry air that gets out ahead of it. So eventually that might get involved. But in general, this quite literally is able to create its own moist environment because of the favorable upper wind pattern. So one thing we'll look at that we haven't discussed a whole lot is sea surface temperatures. 27, 28 degrees. Sea surface temperatures out here, which equates to about the low 80s in Fahrenheit. Sea surface temperatures in the low 80s, that's not super warm, but for this time of the year it is. So, you check that off the box too for, favorable for the most part sea surface temperatures for this to develop. So, yeah, guys, the last thing we'll wrap this video up with is we'll kind of gradually start to discuss this more and more. What's steering this to kind of go the way it's going? Well, it's basically this huge ridge, right here. Okay, so we know that around ridging, right, the flow kind of goes like this, kind of goes like that, and then it goes like this, and then, it goes like that. But just note that you would think, okay, well, that means this is going to go like this, right? No, that's not what that means. I'm just kind of showing you around ridge of high pressure. This is a huge, massive ridge. Okay, and there's going to be little kinks in the ridge where this, have an opportunity to turn at some point. But for the most part, this is a pretty dominant, what we call Bermuda high. All right, and this is persistent. It stays in place. Those darker reds and just red colors in general, that's where you have the ridge. It looked like you try to get some sort of opening right here, but, this ridge builds back over the southeast, sort of prevents it from turning north, and just basically keeps whatever's going to be in place down into here, down there, okay, with this persistent zonal ridging in place. So this will continue to make this track like this. I know the system isn't right here, but in general, just drawing the arrow just for you guys to see the direction it's heading. So that's all I got, guys. Thank y'all for tuning in. God bless all y'all. Y'all have a wonderful rest of your night. God bless.